Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here at almost the noontime hour. We're at 11 a.m. We got new advisories and a lot of things going on here with respect to Hurricane Irma and with Hurricane Jose. Now, the breaking news this morning, at least with Jose, is the fact that it is now a Category 4, almost a Category 5 hurricane. The reconnaissance aircraft in there found 942 millibars and 150 mile an hour sustained winds. It's getting very, very close to the Northern Leeward Islands. And we have Irma, of course, and now hurricane watches and storm surge warnings have been extended. So let me just go over a few of those things with you. With respect to Irma, we have the storm surge warning extending northward from Jupiter Inlet to Sebastian Inlet and northward on the west side from Bonita Beach northward to Venice. The hurricane watch has been extended northward on the east coast of Florida to the Flagler-Volusia County line and also on the west coast of Florida to the Anclot River. So either just about everybody except the panhandle of Florida is under either a hurricane watch or a hurricane warning at this point. And of course, the warnings continue for South Florida from Bonita Beach on the west side down and around the Florida Peninsula, including the Keys and Lake Okeechobee, on up northward on the east side, including all the major cities on the east coast up to Jupiter Inlet. With regards to Jose, we'll look at Jose with respect to a few changes there, because Jose is coming perilously close to the Northern Leeward Islands. We have tropical storm warnings that have been posted now for, tropical storm warnings for St. Martin and St. Bartholomew. We have the hurricane watches continue for Antigua, Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Martin, and St. Bartholomew. The tropical storm watch is up and may go to a warning for some of these islands: Montserrat, St. Kitts, Nevis, Saba, and St. Eustatius, the British Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, and St. John. Jose has got me really nervous, very worried for the Northern Leewards, because, you know, just like with Irma, the adjustments with this seem to be west and south, west and south, west and south, and that trend continues today. So let's take a look at what's happening. First off, we'll go to the satellite loop with Hurricane Irma, and you can see it here, just refreshing. Now, the eye of Irma is visible by both the radars in the Bahamas and the radars in Cuba. There was a time years ago, of course, when we didn't really have access to the weather data coming out of Cuba at all. So now that's changed, and you can see on the loop it's loading up. Everybody's kind of trying to get in there at the same time. The eye is going through one of these eye wall replacement cycles at the moment, and you can see on the visible it almost disappears. The center is clearly evident there, but what's happening is, in these eye wall replacement cycles, is that the eye decays as a new eye forms, and during this process you usually see a little bit of weakening, or at least some fluctuation in the strength, and then once the cycle is finished, you'll have the eye back again. Now, one of the important things with Irma with respect to its intensity ultimately when it gets to Florida is how close does the eye get to the north coast of Cuba? Does it move over the north coast of Cuba, or does it do a jog and stay offshore? That's going to be critical to whether we wind up with a Category 4 or possibly even a Category 5 hurricane again before landfall in Florida, or does it, you know, stay on the lower end of a Category 4 because of the weakening that might occur over the north coast of Cuba. And of course, the Bahamas are continuing, especially the southern tier of those islands are getting hammered with the hurricane force winds. As you see, the core of the hurricane is going over a good chunk of those islands in the southeastern Bahamas, and some of those lead squalls are going to be moving into the western Bahamas in short order. Florida is straight in line. Weather models have been very consistent here. There's been very little change in the overall idea of a track into South Florida. And we can pull up the forecast model tracks, and they've actually, from overnight, they adjusted a little further to the left. The vast majority of them now are all clustered with a hurricane that skims the north coast of Cuba, but most of those models keep it far enough offshore that opens up the possibility to perhaps one last burst of strengthening before landfall, and then a movement over the Florida Keys, and then right into the southwestern corner of Florida. I continue to believe that from the standpoint of the global models, the European and the GFS, it's the European on the left, the GFS on the right. They're not that far apart, but the track's going to be somewhere in there. All of South Florida will be raked with hurricane conditions here, beginning Saturday night, with the hurricane making landfall sometime Sunday morning, maybe around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And then, of course, right up the state. So you're going to have hurricane force. I think you may wind up with hurricane force gusts all the way up. It's going to be slow to weaken with the circulation of the hurricane literally on both sides, in half of it in the Gulf of Mexico and half of it on the Florida coast. And of course, this slight westward shift now is going to bring hurricane conditions to southwest Florida. Places like Port Charlotte, Fort Myers, and points southward are going to have probably get into hurricane force winds. And it also may wind up changing where the storm surge is. And I have the inundation tool that's available on the National Hurricane Center's website. It is very useful to use this if you are in this area. I'm going to zoom in, and you can look at now these inundation forecasts that are indicated here reflect the forecast track that's being indicated by models, and they're going to change as models change. So if you're using this tool, I would strongly suggest that you check it several times during the day for any changes. But when we look, and the other beauty of this tool, by the way, is the fact that you can zoom in very, very close to your particular area with regards to the inundation. The red that you see, and we're on the west coast of Florida now. I'm a little bit I'm going to widen out so at least we get some geography perspective here. And Naples is visible here, and the red area is indicative of water inundation of 9 feet or higher. So that's 9 feet off the ground. The water will be 9 feet high. And then you get into the lower gradations, which are 6 in the brown, 3 in the yellow, and the blue is 1 foot. And you can see, at least this is probably going to be updated as we go through the day. If we take the hurricane in here somewhere in this area, so it'll probably match up pretty well. And when we look at the East Coast, you can see there's inundation issues that are going to occur in and around Homestead, in the coastal areas there. You go northward toward Miami, you start to get the inundation confined more to the coastal areas than anything else. And then it gets to a foot of water in and around the Miami area, Miami Beach, right along the immediate coast. But the bigger numbers are going to be south of there, and then around the bottom of Florida on the peninsula, and then on up the west side. You go to nhc.noaa.gov. If you click on, when you're on that page, just look where the Irma advisories are, and you'll see a link to the storm inundation and storm surge. But the inundation is the interactive map. Again, extremely useful with regards to, for those of you who are down there and take a look at this. Steve Addy, I'm live here on YouTube. I did a separate one on Facebook a little while ago, so I am here. Okay, to prove it, I am here. Okay, my problem here is the fact that if I stream it live if I pre-tape the video before going live, I can comment while you guys are asking me questions, but I can't do those two things at the same time. So I am here live. Okay, this is not the same one on YouTube because on Facebook, because the Facebook one I didn't have the advisories. So we got the NAM model. So let's take a look at what the NAM did today, and it had a real squirrely run last night where it tried to run it up the East Coast, which we knew was just nonsense. I have to be honest, though, a little pit in my stomach appeared at that moment when I did see that, and I just couldn't understand why it did that. I saw what it then did on the upper air, and it was just not feasible in terms of what was happening overall. None of the global models, not a single model did what the NAM did last night, so that's not happening. And clearly, as we see what's happening today, it's not happening. So here's the NAM today. Keeps the center off the north coast of Cuba, then turns it northward and northeastward, brings it over the Florida Keys into southwest Florida. So it is a little bit to the left of the prior run of its prior run. It's to the left, and it's a bit to the left of the global models overnight. Runs it up through the spine of the state, and then actually goes west of Jacksonville. And by this time, it is probably weakened down to a Category 1 or a strong tropical storm. You see how the isobars, the lines of equal pressure that go around the low, how very tight they are. When they're very tight like that, when the gradient is very, very tight, that's where you have your hurricane force winds. As it moves northward, those lines start to spread apart a little bit. The pressure gradient starts to relax to some degree. So you get a lessening of that core of winds, and the hurricane basically just spreads out and begins to weaken. So it might be at this point producing tropical storm force winds with hurricane force gusts, and most of the rain starts to lift northward. So you get rain up into Georgia, South Carolina, and western North Carolina, with some bands reaching southwest North Carolina on the coast. The NAM's assessment of what's happening is not an unfair one in my view. I don't think we have the 10-meter wind? Yes, we do. So we can at least look at the core of the winds here. So here's Irma coming on shore, and the top of the scale winds are 84, 88 knots or higher, really, and so 100 miles an hour or higher. So you do have a pretty extensive area of 100-mile-an-hour winds coming inland, and then you can see how the maximum winds remain mainly confined to the coastal waters once the hurricane is well inland, and that's going to produce hurricane force winds up and down the Florida on both coasts. This is something that we've been talking about on and off for the last couple of days, the possibility that this could happen. Let me see, where did I save? This is, by the way, through all of this, not only do we have Jose, okay, I do have the satellite for Jose, so let's take a look at that. Jose is now a Category 4 hurricane with top winds of 150 miles an hour. It's still moving. It's moving west-northwestward. It's going to have to make a turn soon. Most of the models bring it very, very close to the northern leewards. If it doesn't make that turn soon, it's going to wind up passing over those northern Leeward Islands. It's going to be very, very close here. I'm also somewhat surprised, by the way, over the fact that we are seeing this storm very deep, very intense, given the fact that that's water that Irma passed over just a couple of days ago, and I would have thought that there would have been some upwelling and at least cooled the water by a few degrees. But when I looked at the water temperature map, it really didn't cool that much. The water layers, they are warm, I guess, pretty far down into the ocean, so the upwelling has a much less of an impact than it does when you have storms up in the northern Gulf of Mexico or off the southeast coast of the United States. So the big question is going to be, are we going to see the hurricane Jose come perilously close to the Leeward Islands? I'm trying here now to get the track model guidance for Jose. And just give me a second here, folks. I should have it in a second. I'm just trying to find it. I am live, by the way. I know some of you may have seen me on Facebook a little while ago. I did a separate one for Facebook. And the reason why I can't comment at the same time is the fact that I just can't do two things at once. So it's just I have to maneuver this switcher that I have in order to get these maps up. I'm loading everything up as I speak with you. So just bear with the black screen. I know there's a black screen. Don't worry about it. It's going to be, there's going to be something on there in a second. Just takes a moment to load. I got to copy and paste links, and here we go. So we should get it now. All right, so here's our track model guidance for Jose. And the track models, a few of them bring them over the leewards, the northern leewards, or close. Most of them keep it just barely north of the Leeward Islands. And by the way, you'll notice that the models take it northwest and then north and then kind of turn it to the east. There's going to, once it gets, it's being somewhat influenced by the pull of Irma. And there will come a point where that connection, that slight connection, is going to disappear once Irma moves inland. And when that does happen, the upper air flow in this area of the Atlantic is going to be very, very weak for several days. So it's quite possible that unless it gets picked up by some trough to the north, it may just get left behind and it may loop around for a few days. I have already seen weather models do all sorts of different things with this. And I suspect that we're going to see some rather interesting runs over the weekend with regards to Jose and where it might go. They're going to be all over the place, and I would surely bet that one or two runs may show it coming back westward toward the Bahamas or even beyond that. I hesitate at this point to put any stock in any of that because of the fact that there's just too much going on, and it's also too far out into the long range. So I think we'll look at all these things, of course, but I wouldn't put those of you who pull up the models on your own at tropicaltidbits.com. I wouldn't jump up and down over any one particular run that does something on the order of a movement back toward the U.S. or the Bahamas, because there's just, like I said, there's just too much going on in the upper atmosphere. Now, we don't want to forget Hurricane Katia. Normally, this hurricane would get a little attention, but it's not because it's being certainly overpowered by the other two. Katia is a Category 2 hurricane in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, and there are hurricane warnings for the southwest coast of on the Gulf of Mexico area here. This could even strengthen a little bit more, but it is moving southwestward, and it will be moving inland in short order, probably sometime tonight. So, but at this point, it's kind of marvelous from a meteorological perspective that you have two Category 4, almost Category 5 hurricanes at the same time, and a Category 2 hurricane there as well. Just an amazing satellite signature, really, when you look at it. You've got Jose approaching the leewards. You've got Irma moving through the Bahamas and north of Cuba, taking aim for South Florida, and Katia in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. So just really amazing what the hurricane season evolved to once we passed that peak period. Once we moved into the peak activity period of late August into September. The season, in a lot of ways, has just been behaving pretty much according to what climatology would suggest, except for the fact that we're running well ahead of storms. And those of you, and I know there were quite a few of you that were saying how inactive the hurricane season was up until mid-August, and the fact is that it wasn't. We had 7 named storms before Harvey, and that is well above normal, even though we hadn't seen a hurricane until we saw, Gert. I'm even now fading away as to trying to remember what the F storm was. It was a hurricane as well, and I can't remember the name. It was Franklin. Right, Hurricane Franklin, Hurricane Gert, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Jose, and Hurricane Irma. So we've had Franklin, Gert, Harvey, Irma, Jose, and Katia. So we've got 6 hurricanes now since the second half of August into the first week of September in the last 3 weeks. That is an incredibly active period. We've had seasons where in that 3-week span where you would have only seen 1 hurricane in the mix. So I would suspect that we're going to see the weather models come in and adjust a little bit to the left. That would be my prediction on this, but we'll know shortly when the GFS starts off. Just trying to see. Raymond, you're so wrapped up with all these hurricanes, and I haven't even looked at the local weather, so I have no idea. That's, what, you're up there. That's your department, buddy. You take care of the severe weather up in upstate New York, because I haven't really had any time to pay attention. I know there's a lot of instability and cold air with this upper trough coming through, and there were actually some thunderstorms that produced some cold air mass thunderstorms that produced some hail yesterday in a few places, and it's likely to happen again today. But I'm just not paying attention to that at the moment. Yes, tornado. The question of re-intensification of Irma's intensification again back to a Category 5. I think it's possible. It's going to have to. Well, if it stays off the north coast of Cuba and then makes its right turn up toward the Florida Keys, I think there's a fair chance that it could. The GFS indicates this, and the GFS has been pretty decent with its strength predictions so far, but certainly not perfect by any means, but certainly better than what the other models had. Yeah, I think it's possible. If that doesn't happen, if it goes into the north coast of Cuba and goes inland for a little bit, it may weaken it, but I still think it's going to become every bit of a Category 4 before it goes inland over Florida, wherever it is. And as far as Jose is concerned, I mean, that could it's almost a 5 now, so I don't know what could stop it. Eventually there's going to be some shear issues from the outflow of Irma, but it hasn't happened yet, so it might very well come to a 5 as well. Yes, Fred, more coffee, please. Jerry Haber, thank you. Appreciate what you say, and I'm enjoying doing this very much. I just apologize sometimes for a little bit of the sloppiness because of the fact that, I've got so many things going on and I'm trying to get as much as I can for you guys on the air. And sometimes I forget to click an audio switch or a video switch and whatever. And I don't like it to look sloppy, but, we're just doing sometimes, we're doing a lot of this stuff on the fly. Yeah, Steve Adley, it's south. It's somewhat south, but it's not that far south. I would have thought the waters would have been upwelled a little bit. I did notice that the water temperatures are actually cooler by about 1 degree Celsius, which probably is along the lines of statistical noise more than anything else. And it's only in pockets. So the upwelling really didn't do very much. If you looked at the upwelling that occurred along the Texas coast with Harvey, the water temperatures there cooled by, in some cases, 5 to 7 degrees. So it had much more of an impact there than it does in the deep tropical Atlantic. Yeah, the eyewall Joker's tantrum. The eyewall replacement cycle was underway this morning. It's probably almost finished. and you should probably start to see that eye reemerge. Cynthia, does the current NAM track allow Irma to maintain some energy from tapping the Gulf and Atlantic at the same time as it moves north? Yeah, I think that, once it moves, as it moves inland, you look at how the core of the actual circulation of the storm and how it sets up with respect to land, you have almost half of it out in the Gulf of Mexico and maybe a little less than half of it out in the Atlantic with the core in the middle. So that is going to slow weakening down as it moves up the East Coast. Let's see. I'm just scrolling back to some of your comments from earlier. John Zelensky, we talked about the strengthening there. Okay, Babe Heaven, I'm live. So yes, I am live, folks. Okay, just again, that's a reminder. This is a live stream, and I did a separate one for Facebook, and I guess some of you are on both. Let's see. Yeah, by the way, there is probably going to be another one behind it. It may be from a wave that's moving off the African coast now. I don't have time to look at all. I can't even look at Katia. I have just I think I have given it 2 glancing looks in the last 24 hours. I got a Category 2 hurricane in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, and I'm not even paying attention to it. And thankfully, by the way, that thing is pinned down in the southwest Gulf. I mean, could you imagine if that was if there was some sort of bizarre upper air setup that would have taken Katia more to the north and toward the Texas coast, and to have to deal with that after Hurricane Harvey plus Irma plus Jose? Oh my, they'd have to put me on a stretcher and take me away. And yes, Joyce Mack, these are the busiest 2 weeks of the hurricane season statistically. The statistical peak is September 10th, which is 2 days from today. Now, that doesn't mean that suddenly activity just falls off a cliff. In active seasons, you might maintain the high level of activity right through the end of September and into the first half of October. But I just had to move my stuff because I'm going to have a visitor here in a second. Cody, I'm sorry. Kovu, come here. You want to say hi? Come on. Oh, he hasn't appeared in a long time. He's a little puss boy. Kovu keeps me company through all of this. He somehow knows when I'm doing my live streams. My dog is asleep. Let me just tilt the camera just a little bit. Maybe this will help. There we go. Hang on. Yeah, all right. You had your little appearance. There we go. He's had enough. He said hi, and now he says it's time to go. Yeah, Jazzy Bill, my cat, actually, he's lost quite a bit of weight. He's no longer the giant mountain lion that he was. He just eats like out of control, and apparently he had some problems with his teeth, so he can't eat the hard food anymore. So he has wound up eating a lot less. So now he's down to a almost perfect weight for his side. Yeah, Joyce, he's kind of spoiled. He's an incredibly affectionate cat. He loves everybody. He's anybody that comes in the house, he just runs right up to. He actually grew up as a kitten. He grew up with my dog, so he behaves more like my dog than most cats do. Not shy at all, very vocal, and he may come back for another visit. Yes, Steve, Jose is a Cat 4, almost a Cat 5 with winds of 150. It only needs to get to 155-ish, and you got yourself another Cat 5. From a meteorological standpoint, it's just incredible to see 2 Cat 4s at the same time with the Cat 2. The new GFS is going to be starting shortly. Let's see, just have Chris O'Shaughnessy just joined in. Thanks for all the videos over the last week. You've been I appreciate it. Thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate it. I want to strongly thank those of you who have gone into Super Chat and bought me a cigar or a cup of coffee. It's very generous of you, and I really appreciate it. it's great. It's very nice, and I'm humbled by it. Thank you. Let's see. Yeah, I know we've had these earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, solar storm that occurred, by the way, that if you're far enough north, up in New England and upstate New York, you will possibly see a beautiful display of the Northern Lights. I'm not sure if there was a possibility of some last night, and there will be a chance of that tonight, and maybe again Saturday night, with the skies are clear. So take advantage of that if you're watching from areas up to the north. It could be quite the show because it was apparently quite the solar storm. Joyce, yes, from the time I was a kid, I was always interested in weather, and I knew from the age of 12 that this is what I wanted to do with my life. And I was always considered myself to be extremely fortunate that I was able to do that, to spend my time earning a living at something I really, really love to do. And especially now, because I'm doing this as my own product. It's not like I'm working for somebody and doing it. I mean, I have my jobs that I work, but this is my stuff. This is my websites, my YouTube live streams, my Facebook. Nobody can tell me what I should do or shouldn't do. And please, Cynthia, no locusts. I'm not a big fan of bugs. Joey Blanco, what is Hurricane Lee? That Lee is the next name, and let's hope it doesn't appear while these other three are still around, because that would give me another thing to talk about. Minus the destruction in the weather patterns right now are historic, and to be able to witness them as wow. A tiny bit of coloring in northwest Pennsylvania sky in the wee hours, Wendy. Oh, great. That was the Northern Lights. You know what? You might get a much better show. You might get a better show of that tonight. And yes, Steve, no, there isn't, no casual connection with all of these things. Although it's very interesting, the hurricanes with all the energy they're producing. A few people talking about minor earthquakes that were occurring, and of course there was a major one in the Southwest Gulf somewhere last night. It's quite possible that some of this energy rippling along is showing up on seismographs. We're actually someone I know was going to check with up at Palisades in New Jersey. They have this big earthquake place that they watch all this stuff. And they were going to contact them to ask them that specific question. And Chris O'Shaughnessy, you're absolutely correct. I tell this to everybody, and when I talk to kids, high school kids and college kids, do something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. You're absolutely correct. This is not work for me, especially now when I'm doing it as my own product. It doesn't feel like work. This feels like I enjoy this very much, and I look forward to doing it very much. Big difference than, say, getting into a car and driving many miles in both directions. Amanda, thank you, and thank you for being here. Let's see. Irma covers a lot of geography. Joker's tantrum. It's from the high clouds from top to bottom. It's every bit of 400 or 500 miles in diameter. It has evolved into a very big geographic storm. And yes, M. Azera with the hurricane watch was extended northward up the Florida coast on both sides. Which makes sense given what we're seeing. And Irma, yes, is going to be retired. So you will not have a Hurricane Irma again. You won't have a Hurricane Harvey again either. Both those names are retired. Thanks, Chris. You've been watching me for a long time. That's really great to hear. I've been doing this for, since 1979 with my first job. And I've been, on air in the New York area since 1986. So it's been 31 years. Between radio and TV, and also in New Jersey on New Jersey 101.5 radio for almost 20 years there. Thank you. 6 months to black. I really appreciate it, hitting the super chat with the enough to get me a nice hot cup of coffee from Starbucks, or what I usually call $4. Thank you so much. We are going to, by the way, continue with the coverage here tomorrow and Sunday, since I don't have to be anywhere. Although I am going to get some fishing in because the weather is good. And if my buddy Phil Buzz is watching this, my fishing buddy, we got to go fishing, please. We haven't gone in weeks, okay? So we need to go, and I need a break, and you need a break too. So let's get going. Oh, June, hi, dude. June Keegan is on. Oh, that's so cool. Hi, June. I hope everything is well. One of these days, since you live very close to me, one of these days I'm going to, I'll send you a message, and I'll come by to see you if you're not busy, okay? But so glad you're on here. Thank you. Do I have a generator? Actually, I don't. It's really strange because when Hurricane Sandy happened, I'm on an electrical grid where I live that was one of the first grids that was put underground. So I actually, in my area, everybody lost power except for about a 1.5 mile square area. And I was inside that 1.5 mile square area. My neighbors across the street are in the other grid, and they lost power, but I didn't. So I actually had power through all of Sandy until very late the next day, when they had to take everybody down in the entire area in order to bring everybody up. And at that point, I lost power for 30 hours. But I never lost it during Sandy, so I don't want that retested, by the way. You know, but you would think I would be a little bit more prepared. But you're looking at a guy who doesn't even like to look at use an umbrella. All right, you know what? Hang on one second. I'm going to switch off for 1 second to go look at the GFS because that just started. So maybe we can get at least an early view of what the GFS has. So we're going to do live weather models here. By the way, those of you who were on last night, where we did I did the show with Joe Rayo. We'll probably do it again tonight, so stand by for that. Hopefully, if I get home in time, with respect to traffic, that I will be able to do it closer to 11:30. But figure sometime between 11:30 and midnight, I'll get that live stream rolling. So here we go. Here's the new GFS, and you're looking at the track of the hurricane with the 10-meter winds. Now, let's look at the pressure. It does keep the pressure down in the low 920s, which is Category 4, borderline 5. And then it at least so far now, it keeps it just off the north coast of Florida. We are at Saturday afternoon. So we'll just wait for this to update because that's as far out as it is so at the moment. On this track, if it makes the right turn here and starts to move northward toward the Florida Keys, there certainly is enough room over the open waters for this thing to strengthen one last time. And conditions aloft are favorable for strengthening. There's no wind shear issues at all. Joe Rayo's great. Joe and I, it's a funny story with Joe Rayo and I. We actually didn't meet until we were both, well, he's a couple of years older than me, and his hair is also wider than mine. But Joe and I actually met. I was, I think, about 19, and he was 21. He worked for a company, a weather company, in the New York area at the time. And as it turned out, he and I actually, from the time of birth, almost, we lived not many blocks apart. And he was. I was born in East Harlem in New York, in an Italian section there, and so was he. We both moved to the Bronx at about the same time, to one area of the Bronx, and we were, a short distance apart. Then I moved, and he moved to another area in the Bronx around the same time, and we were, literally, less than a mile apart at that point. And it's just that we never really we didn't know each other. We never crossed paths. We went to different schools. Although very early on at our first school, we both went to the same school for kindergarten, and he was there for first and second grade as well. And then we finally crossed paths, and that was almost 40 years ago. And we've been on and off talking and ever since. And we worked together at News 12 Long Island. Then he went to News 12 Westchester. I went to Channel 11 in New York. And we kind of lost. We professionally, you always kind of stay in touch. But this was before Facebook, and before we had all this social media and even email, for God's sakes. I mean, I go back to a time when there was no such thing as email. That's how old I am. All right. But we always kind of stayed in touch with each other, and then I went back to freelance at News 12, and he helped me out with that. So I was able to do some work over at News 12 Westchester, and now we're both together at FiOS 1 News, which is great. So we basically started our careers together, and we're both kind of toward the end of our careers, looking toward retirement and that sort of thing. So we're going to finish it together, and that's I got to tell you, I consider myself to be very blessed from a professional standpoint because of the fact that I was able to do not only what I loved, but I was able to do it among some very talented and wonderful people over the years. And so I was extremely, extremely lucky. Okay, so let's go back to see if any more of the GFS is in. Yep. So we have the GFS now as a Category 5. If that pressure is right, 897 millibars, that would be the lowest pressure ever, very close to the lowest pressure ever recorded in the Atlantic, Caribbean, or the Gulf of Mexico. It doesn't quite get down to I believe Wilma was down to 883 at one point. So this is the GFS is 897. So I think that there is the possibility that we could see this go back to a Category 5. But again, there's a lot of things that got to play out right here because of the interaction with the land masses to the south and to the north, and whether the core of the circulation gets disrupted by the north coast of Cuba or not. This is, by the way, we are now out to Sunday 2 a.m. The center is still offshore approaching the Keys. So I'll just take it back here. We've got the hurricane staying off the north coast of Cuba, starting to make its turn at this point, and starting to move northward. So I suspect that the GFS, when it's all said and done, is going to be a little bit to the left of its prior run, but not by too much. And the European will come in to the left of the GFS, and we're going to get that landfall in Florida. That's definite now. I really don't. I think there's no way that this thing turns sooner. I'll leave a tiny, tiny window open that there's that, ever so tiny possibility that could happen. But from what I'm seeing here right now, none of the hurricane track models turn it east of Miami anymore. They all turn it west of Miami. And again, we've been seeing that shift west and south. For those of you who are just joining or joined late, I just want to just go back to Jose for just a second. And Jose, you can see it here on the forecast model tracks. It's a Category 4, almost Category 5 hurricane, not very far from the Northern Leeward Islands. The hurricane track models have it mostly passing to the north, but just to the north. If we don't start to see more of a northward component of motion soon, the threat to the northern leewards of getting a second major hurricane just a couple of days after getting a Category 5 will increase considerably. Why don't we take a look and see the recon? This is an old Katia recon, so let me get a recon from Irma because it's there now. I just have to find it. Just bear with me for 1 second. And all right, let's see. Okay, getting there. Apparently everybody's trying to get, oh, there we go. All right, we still seem to be going through this eye wall replacement cycle from what I'm seeing. So let me just put that up there for you. Here's the latest recon. It's in there right now. There we go. And the 3 passes, you can see the course is actually, it's west-northwest, but it's probably closer to the west than the west-northwest, maybe about 280 or 285. The eye is right here. Here's the north coast of Cuba. You can see the Bahamas to the north. 927, 927, and the last pass was 929. So we might see the pressure come up just a little bit more before the eye wall replacement cycle is done, and we after that could wind up seeing another round of intensification. So let's go back to the GFS now and see if we have anything new. And let me just start it again. All right, it's refreshing, so let's see. And hello. That's not helping me. There we go. All right, so let's back it up. So here we go with the new GFS. It stays offshore, the north coast of Cuba, makes the turn, and there it is now approaching the Florida Keys, over the Keys, and into southwest Florida. So it actually matches up very well with the NAM. So it looks like we're going to have a Category 5 hurricane come in more west into southwesternmost Florida, right at the bottom of the peninsula, with the core of the hurricane coming onshore into the Florida Everglades and spreading northward. So I'm going to guess that the European's going to come in the same. Those of you that are on the west coast of Florida should be advised about this, that your issues have increased a bit now that we seem to see this track a little bit further to the west. As far as the East Coast is concerned, I think everything still remains the same with hurricane conditions up the East Coast. Perhaps as you go north of Miami and Pompano and those areas, with the core of the hurricane passing, if it passes this far west, you might be spared some of the really bad stuff, the super bad stuff. But I certainly would not at all let my guard down here. All of South Florida will experience hurricane force winds of a Category 4 or possibly a Category 5 hurricane. So I think at this point we pretty much covered it all. Were you able to see the GFS there? I'm sorry, I don't know if I switched it correctly. If you just somebody let me know that you were able to see the GFS the way I ran it, because I kind of just saw a flash on the screen that maybe I did something wrong. So if you could just let me know, that would be great. So it looks like the core size and the track, Steve, that's going to really determine the impact on Miami. We're not going to know that until almost at the last minute, really. And the storm surges will be quite high, 15 to 20 feet. I'm not too. I have to defer with respect to the storm surge. I got to do a little research about that part of Florida and how it works, because of where it is and how it's coming inland. It's a narrowing of the water there. The water there in the Florida Straits from the Gulf side and the Atlantic side, and given the position and what kind of wind is going to be there, I want to take a look at what's happening. And yes, Serena, there's probably going to be another system behind Jose, but it might be a few days before we have to even start talking about that. So go to nhc.noaa.gov if you live in Florida and you want to see that inundation. Use the inundation tool. It's on the homepage. If you look to see where all the advisories and maps that are listed for Hurricane Irma, it's one of the choices. It says, I think, storm inundation tool. on it. Click on that, and you can take it down to your own neighborhood, and it will show you how many feet of water above the ground is expected in your particular area. And of course, you can keep in touch with all the latest on my website, meteorologistjoecioffi.com, and my compatriot Angry Ben Scott has New York City covered on nycweathernow.com. And that's really about it. Thank you. Those of you who have sent me something on PayPal, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Those of you who've sent me something on Super Chat, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I really am very grateful for you to be here every day. I'm getting nice numbers and when we do the live views. And I'm really enjoying, as I've said, I can't say it enough. I'm really enjoying all this. But you know what? It's coming up on noon. It's time for me to get ready for work, which is at FiOS 1 News Long Island and FiOS 1 News New Jersey. Joe Rayo at FiOS 1 News Hudson Valley. And we will live stream tonight. Figure sometime around or just after 11:30, sometime between 11:30 and midnight, I will start the stream. I'll schedule it for 11:30, but it might start a little bit later than that, depending on what kind of traffic I run into on my drive home. Have a great day. We'll stay safe. And for you folks in Florida that are watching, our hearts go out to you. We'll keep you abreast of everything going on. Hopefully you'll be able to keep a wireless signal for as long as possible, and you can get these live streams or wherever you're getting your weather information from. I just hope that you're getting it from a reputable source. So, use the National Weather Service for, especially when it comes to have to make any last minute decisions here. The Hurricane Center, the National Weather Service, or your local government officials to assist you in making decisions that are right for you and right for your family. Have a great day. Talk to you later.